compare the Romanian deadlift, the deadlift, and the Sumo deadlift, their differences, and why you might use each or when you might use each. We are not going over the base form of each of these, but how they differ from one another. I have demos of all of these and or will have a breakdown of all of these in the future on YouTube as well. Subscribe so that you don't miss those. All right, let's compare. I am Annie Miller, and I help you learn as you train and enjoy your lifts again without having to figure it out for yourself. These are all deadlift variations. Note that I didn't mention the stiff leg or straight leg deadlift. That's because I don't see the point. The risk to reward is not there for me. A Romanian deadlift will give you all of the tension needed for your hamstrings, whether you are working strength or hypertrophy. There is no need to straighten the knees further. Again, that's just my opinion. On one hand, the sumo and conventional deadlifts can be categorized as a combo of pushing and pulling. The quads press the floor away as the hamstrings and the glutes work to pull your hips into extension. On the other hand, the Romanian deadlift is strictly a hinge-based pulling pattern, biasing the hamstrings. The glutes are involved as they are the prime mover for hip extension, but I would not consider a classic RDL a glute dominant exercise when compared to other options that you have to work the glutes. If you wanted to make the RDL a more glute dominant exercise, you could add a band around the hips, pulling you posteriorly. That would add tension to the glutes in the top of the RDL and give them a good stretch at the bottom as well. The Romanian deadlift, like I said, is a strict hinge, which is categorized as a pull. Deads and sumo deads are a hybrid of push and pull, like I mentioned, due to having more knee flexion and quad engagement. The RDL also does not touch the floor. Therefore, you could argue there is a constant or close to constant tension on the working muscles due to not breaking at the ground. That all differentiates the RDL. Strictly a hinge movement, hamstring dominant, doesn't touch the floor. The main differences between the sumo deadlift and the conventional are foot placement or stance, and therefore your chest angle. Conventional deadlifts, the feet are shoulder or hip width, and the chest has a more forward angle. The sumo is a wide stance with the feet turned out, allowing the hips to be closer to the bar and keep a more upright chest. The degree of your chest and hips will depend on your individual limb and torso lengths. The shoulders will likely be slightly over the bar in a conventional deadlift and straight above the bar in a sumo, but again, this can vary, so don't worry about it. Okay, so brief circle back to the RDL. The main difference between the RDL and the deadlift is the knee angle. Knee flexion is greater in the deadlift than the RDL, which demands more recruitment from the glutes and the quads, like I mentioned. The lesser knee bend in the RDL, again, increases the demand from the hamstrings. Both are technically posterior chain exercises, yet the sumo calls upon the adductors, those are your inner thighs, as the third string hip extensors in comparison to the RDL and the deadlift. The grip width for all three movements will typically be shoulder width, so straight down perpendicular to the floor. If you're using a barbell, you can do double overhand or alternating for sumo and conventional, as well as the RDL, but double overhand is typically used with the RDL, not an alternated grip. So in a program, remember the sumo and conventional recruit more muscle mass from the lower body compared to the Romanian deadlift, therefore are most commonly used as the main lift in program design. You'll be able to move more weight with either of these, the deadlift and the sumo, than you can with the Romanian deadlift alone. That is why we see the RDL used as accessory work, taxing the hamstrings and the back muscles, potentially after a different lower body compound lift as the main exercise. We dabble with both conventional deadlift and sumo deadlift in my Built by Annie programming because I want athletes to be exposed to both of these patterns. You can get a free week of BBA in the description below. If your anatomy favors one of these variations, then use it. There is no rule stating that everyone needs to do both the sumo and the conventional. Sumos might put less tension on your low back, or maybe you can't seem to find a comfortable position for sumos, so you prefer to do conventional. That's all good. If you do find that your body favors one of these, please let me know down in the comments below. Are you a sumo girl or guy, or are you more of a conventional person? Also, break the rules. You can always play with what I consider to be kind of a hybrid stance, where the legs are outside of the arms, but they're not quite as wide as a classic sumo. Many people find this comfortable because it is quite a natural lifting stance. How did I do? If you found this helpful, please be sure to subscribe and watch this next video.